Sometimes you just get lucky when you get the offensive tackle that you were waiting for. Kingsley Suamataia is walking into this roster in what role? What does it come down to for him with these Kansas City Chiefs today on Locked On Chiefs?
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. We're brought to you today by Monopoly Go. If you want to get in the action right now, especially if you have a competitive side and you're a big fan of the Monopoly Go game with its a twist on the old classic, make sure you download that with your friends right now. Monopoly Go is free on the App Store and Google Play. We're going to talk the second round pick, the luck of the draw, the guy that I think was probably the biggest roll of the dice. If you missed my conversation with Matt Derrick earlier in the week, it was the poker-themed show that was really about getting down to the basics of it and being able to bluff your way through and actually hit some cards. So we're going to talk O-line depth later in the show, the in-season battle that will go on. We're definitely going to get to where he begins. We're brought to you, like we are all the time, by the rest of our podcast network, Locked On. You can find us every day here and on Apple and on Spotify and all over the place. Like, sub, and hit the bell here. Join us everywhere. He's Chris Clark. You can find him on Chiefs Corner. My work's over on NFL 33 and RGR Football, as well as Rogue APC. You can find me there. Make sure, if you're going to get subbed, you might as well be on all the platforms, and you want to get on that text line. It's 816-357-8781, and you will get the latest news as it drops. The news today that we start with is Kingsley Suamataia's initial role walking in. We're not going to learn much from rookie minicamp or from most of the OTAs until the mandatory veteran minicamp, where everybody will actually be there. I don't know that an offensive lineman or even a defensive lineman at this point is going to show us enough to get a feel, but I'm still excited about it. I want to see him out there. He seems like a very energetic kid from his personality, and I know he can move well. So I want to see kick step work. I want to see him obviously working against air because he's not going to get hit a lot. That's perfectly fine with me. I want to give him that acclimation period, and I'm excited about what that will look like for him so he can come in and start competing.
The only thing in my mind that could really come out of this weekend, which starts tomorrow, we'll see the rookie minicamp starting tomorrow, is going to be if he takes any snaps at any position other than left tackle. If they have him work as a right tackle, how many snaps do they have him work as a right tackle? That's the only thing that really would be something that I think would be newsworthy coming out of this minicamp. Personally, I'm not going to say he can't get any snaps at right tackle, but if it's 50-50 or even 40% right tackle, I think that says more than maybe we would expect. I think he's going to get closer to 75, 80, if not 90% left tackle snaps, just because I do think that they want him to focus on that, and that's the plan for him.
Yeah, I think it is come in here and battle with Wanye for left, and the loser will become the swing tackle because we know they both can play on both sides. You have a very good point about, do they have him take right-handed snaps right now just to see what he can do? Probably. There's going to be an extended evaluation. You can get a lot from a 30 visit and clearly the drills of the combine, et cetera. But until you're on the practice field with Andy Heck and you are working on exactly what he wants you to do and how he wants you to do it, there's always a little bit of question. So that's a very good point. I don't think that they plan on making him move to right. Will they give him some exposure just to see what he's got? That'd be my opinion. But I expect this to be a battle from the get-go with Wanye Morris. Is that how you see it as well, or you expect something different?
No, I do think that that's the way that this is going to go. I do think that he's going to be battling Wanye Morris, and I do think that they want him to win that starting left tackle job. It's just going to be, that would be, my whole point was that would be the only thing that would throw me off from this weekend is if we hear he's taking half of the snaps over at right tackle and they have some undrafted free agent running at left tackle for some of it. I don't expect that that's going to happen, but that's the only thing I'll really be looking at when it comes to him. I think when you look at everything else, yeah, he's going to work on his kick step. He's going to work on all the different things that linemen can do, but you're still not really going to get anything until you really get a feel for what they're doing at training camp. I mean, even in OTAs and in veteran mini camp, you're not really going to get anything because they don't have the pads on. They can only do so much. You can't really lock up and really take anybody to the ground and and finish through on blocks. And that it makes it really hard to really get much from these next couple of months at the offensive line position.
Yeah, it does make it difficult. So I think it's about rote execution of drills, and Wanya's got a clear advantage there over the rookie. We'll see how OTAs go, but I think it's kind of like the warm-up right now. The battle will be camp, and like you said, nothing can really be decided until you get in those one-on-ones in camp, in full pads, and actually have somebody trying to clobber you.
Yeah, and the thing that I think could really stand out is if you end up seeing Kingsley be the guy that's starting when veterans show up or in OTAs. If he's already able to take that step, that really means something. Because I don't think they're going to slot him in there just because they drafted him in the second round. So to me, it's a matter of he would have to show that he has a good enough grasp on the playbook, which sounds funny to say when we're talking about offensive linemen right now, just a couple of days removed from the draft. But that's really what it comes down to. Can he be in the right spot? Is he going to is he going to be trying to take out the right blocker? Or sorry, the right defender when he's doing whatever he's supposed to be doing on all these snaps. That's going to be the big thing. How does he handle that? We'll know a lot more, I think, probably just from how do reps go when the veterans are there.
Yeah, it's got to come that way, and it's going to be a progression in terms of who, when, where, and what the battle is that you're being measured against. What's that going to look like? The in-season process for Kingsley Suamataia. We're going to talk about that coming up next here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Right now is a great time to get in the action because it's winner take all in the NBA and the NHL. And FanDuel's giving you guys a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, as we head into this weekend's festivities, you have the Boston Bruins up at minus 275. That is a bet you can get the action in against the Toronto Maple Leafs that I think a lot of people are into. Now, there's NBA odds as well. I'm focused on NHL right now. If you're not watching football, I think I'd rather watch NHL at this point because I think, a feeling for that and how you can get some wins under your belt. Right now, new customers can get $150 back in bonus bets just for winning a $5 bet. So if you have a feel for one of them, you can get in there. That's $150 back in bonus bets on spreads, money lines, props, a whole 9 yards. You can get it and more at FanDuel.com/lockedon. You can do that. Make every playoff shot count at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You can also get into the action at Locked On Sports today. That feed is available here on YouTube and on Amazon Fire TV. And you're going to get all the best of all the sports because we cover them all here on the Locked On Podcast Network every single day. So get after it. And that's exactly what the Chiefs are going to do as well, starting with Kingsley. And I'm going to have to come up. I might just start calling him Sua. I don't know. I have to shorten something to make it make sense and be able to speak it consistently. So I'm going to do that. But I'm really intrigued because I thought Wanya showed some prowess in the run game. I do like coming off the ball. I think Kingsley's got a little bit more athleticism to him generally, and he can run block as well. So I don't see that as much of a determining factor as some people want it to be in terms of who ends up being the starting left tackle for this particular season. So for me, it all comes down to your pass sets and how you're able to not only be spatially aware of where Joe Tooney's replacement is, because let's be frank, Joe probably isn't going to participate in OTAs. We don't have that for certain, but that's my expectation. When it comes to camp, he might not be out there as well. We'll see where he's at. But you got to be aware of him, but you got to be aware of the quarterback. And again, Morris, Wanya has the advantage having played with Mahomes, but I think Kingsley's a little bit more fleet of foot and a little bit cleaner, especially if they ask him to start taking vertical sets. I think the 45 to vertical sets is where the battle for this position is really going to be.
And it's going to be fun to watch. I will say this, the thing, and you mentioned it already, the thing that Wanya has going over Kingsley right now is that Wanya's played with Mahomes, and you can watch all the film you want. It's going to be different when you start getting into games, when you start getting into training camp, live practices, even though you're not hitting the quarterback. It's going to be even different when you get into preseason games or regular season games, because the reality is that Mahomes doesn't necessarily do drops the way the normal quarterback does. So you're going to have to adjust what you do to be able to keep people away from him. One of the things I loved about Suamataia's conversation right after the draft was he said, he's going to tell Patrick, nobody's going to touch you. I love that thought process. And I think that that's great for him to have. But the reality is that he's got to realize that it's going to be different blocking for Mahomes than it will be anybody else on this roster or anybody he's ever played with before, because Mahomes' dropbacks are so different and he holds the ball for so much longer than most QBs will.
Well, and you have a very good point there. It makes me cringe just a little bit because the last guy who said that was Orlando Brown, and that didn't turn out to be the case. So I wouldn't be making that quote anymore if I were Kingsley, but that's all right. It does come down to getting the feel for it, and that's probably where I want to see as much time right now as they start rookie minicamp, where you don't have Lonnie Morris breathing down his neck, where he can get reps with Mahomes. It doesn't matter which side it's on to me right now, because I think you get some benefit from both. So like you said, if they're going to flip-flop them, it's got to be with Mahomes. They can't do it right this moment, but during the next session of OTAs, I believe is the first time that Mahomes will be on the field with him.
Yep.
So get through your rookie camp, get your feet under you, like kind of get the lay of the land, know where the locker room is and the practice field and all that kind of stuff. But then like as soon as possible, can you get reps with him consistently to get that feel? That's probably the number one thing that I think will go through the season and will eventually decide who ends up playing more of the starting left tackle snaps between he and Wanya Morris.
Let me ask you a question, because this is where I struggle with this question in my mind. Is it a wasted second round pick if he is the swing tackle this year? No. Or is it, or can you look at it as a wasted second round pick or a third round pick for Wanya Morris being a swing tackle this year? I mean, no. You could take it either direction.
I wouldn't say either of them are wasted, because for this very specific reason, attrition's a real thing in the NFL.
Yep.
You're going to have some time when you need your swing tackle to play. So if either of them takes that role, that's good. Like right now, we've talked most of the offseason about adding Donovan Smith back to this room, and we're going to talk about the O-line room here in depth in a minute.
And they still could.
Right now, they still could. Yes, there could be a mentor, but I don't think at this point that you bring him in to be a starter. I think at this point, he is meant to be a backup, and you want one of these guys to be your swing and one of these guys to be your starter, and he's there to support them. That would be the way that I would do it now, because of what you just mentioned, a second and a third significant draft capital. You got to get on the field. Wanya, I thought, while he did leave some things to be, desired out on the field last year, he at least gave you some snaps. I expect Kingsley will be able to do that even if he doesn't win the job outright. So neither of them would be a wasted pick to me. I think that you're preparing and you're in depth and you're able to get on the field and go through a little bit of attrition. This team has played 20 plus games. Again, another year in a row, right? It's that much more. You got to have it for the long run.
And there's talk about it being 18 games in the next several seasons. So we'll see whether or not that goes anywhere. But you make a great point. I mean, and I'm not trying to say I think it's a wasted pick. I guess I'm just looking at it from the perspective of you're using all this draft capital on your offensive line. And at this point, you're hoping that one of those guys doesn't play, because you don't want Jawan Taylor to be out either. So you're going to have one of those guys that you're hoping isn't going to be playing very much. But to me, I think it's still worth it. I mean, you look at what they gave up for. I mean, they drafted Niang in the third round. It never ended up working out. He got injured. He never was able to work out, and that stinks. But the reality of playing football in the NFL is there's going to be injuries. Two, different players, get better at different rates. So just because if Kingsley doesn't win it this year doesn't necessarily mean he couldn't win it next year. There's lots of different things that could happen. And one of the things, Jeff Schwartz actually mentioned this, one of the biggest things that Kingsley's got to get figured out is he's got to get his footwork figured out. He's got to get his hands figured out and his technique, and he's got to stay down. So the big question is how big of an impact, how quickly of an impact can Andy Heck have on Suamataia this season? That's going to be the real key to whether or not he's going to be the starter, is how quickly he can advance and improve on the things that he struggled with in college.
Agreed. And that's got to come rather quickly because there is some concern in the room. What does the depth look like in the offensive line room? That's coming up next here on the Locked On Podcast Network.
All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You've already talked about that. But there's just so much good stuff to this game. In a Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends or time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much you can get. Unique stickers that you can trade with your friends to complete albums, cool new places to travel the boards, or hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on.
The Locked On Sports Today feed is where you want to go for your 24/7 feed of sports information from all of our most talented hosts on every show across the network. That's here on the YouTube platform, Locked On Sports Today, as well as on Amazon Fire. Go find that, and you will be a happy camper. Now, we're talking about the rookie, Kingsley Suamataia, his conceptual battle with Wanya Morris, second-year player, the same position. But that's not all that's going on here. I do think there is a distinct possibility, as we've had zero update on the injury to Joe Thuney, that someone's going to have to fill in there. Until this draft, the only interior player they had on the roster that could have filled in was Mike Caliendo. Not something I'm terribly happy about. Kudos to Mike for making it this far. When he was able to play last year, I was not happy. So that was a concern. At this point, you drafted two other guys. We're going to talk about them coming up in the next couple of weeks, folks, in Hunter Norzad and CJ Hansen. Also have to be considered is probably not the best option to fill in for Joe Thuney if he has to miss time. Now, hopefully, Joe's fine and had his repair and he's all good to go. But if he's not, say he has to miss a few games to start the season, I postulate to you, I would start Suamataia, even though I haven't seen him practice with the Chiefs yet, at left tackle, and I would move Wanya into left guard. That's what I would do. Do you think that that's a consideration the Chiefs have to look at? And would we know that from an OTA practice trying to get a look at that as well?
It's an interesting postulation. I think that when you look at this, it's a question of who do you feel like can take that guard position and be better at it? And yes, you have to worry about left tackle, but the question to me when you start looking at the left tackle position is who do you think is going to be the better player when the season starts, and who do you think the better player will be at the end of the season? Because I think that could be two different answers. I do think that there's a situation where you could look at it and say maybe Wanya Morris is better now, but it's a question of you watch what happens in rookie minicamp with Kingsley and you see how he progresses through OTAs and you see how he progresses through training camp. Is he progressing enough to where you think even if he's not better than Wanya right now, he will be better than him by the end of the season, and it's worth getting him the reps, even if it's a little bit of a downgrade? And if that's the case, then yeah, I think you have to consider Morris as your left guard. Whether or not that's really going to happen, we'll see. I still think personally that they would probably go with Hunter Norzad, but it's possible that they would look at something else, and it's also possible they signed a couple undrafted guys. It's really hard when it comes to offensive linemen to know who's going to be able to step in and do something that you weren't expecting. And while I think that you're probably right, like Morris would be one of those guys that they would look to, I think that that's also asking a lot of Morris, because at that point you're asking Wanya to be your backup or your starting guard. Who's going to be your swing tackle? I mean, in that instance, you'd have to probably bring somebody else in. I don't think you want that guy to be Lucas Niang. I just don't feel like that's a smart choice.
That's a fair point. And Niang is kind of the guy that's on the outside looking in right here. If they were to bring in another veteran, whether it's Donovan or somebody else that gets cut this preseason or whatever. It's Lucas that I think is on the losing end of that stick. But you have a good point. You keep him right now for depth no matter what. So you have 4 tackles on the active roster. Do you think that Godric can come back in? I don't know. Do you think that undrafted free agents and Nick Torres and Ethan Driscoll could push? I don't think so. But it is asking a lot. And so really it is come down to playing your best 5 probably means you're playing both of your possible left tackles.
Well, maybe. Or maybe what they look at is they get to a point where they figure out maybe Joe Thuney's not going to be healthy for the first part of the season, and maybe they make a trade. Or maybe they bring in another offensive lineman or offensive guard to step in and play that position if they don't think that one of the guys they just drafted can do it. But to me, I get why you're asking about Wanye, but to me, I don't think that you want him practicing and playing at guard when if he's not going to be the starter at tackle, he needs reps at both left tackle and right tackle to be ready to be a swing guy. To me, that's the way it looks like. Like, I don't think he's been if he had been in the NFL for 2 or 3 seasons, maybe 4 seasons, I'd feel better about that. But being in the NFL for 1 season, I don't think that you really want him to be a starter at guard and then think maybe he could step in and be your swing tackle if something happened. I mean, I think that's putting him in a bad position. So I think that you would try to, work up, a Norzad or Hansen, it was the other one. Or maybe you look at somewhere else. I'm sure that there's going to be somebody out there that's going to be getting cut. But all that's conjecture right now because we don't know what's going on with Joe Thuney. And I hope he's going to be healthy. But it is a big question because all it takes is one hit the wrong way. If he's not where you really need him to be, that's why you don't want to rush that back. And in some ways, it actually works to the Chiefs' advantage to put a guy like Norzad in and just see if he can run at left guard. Just move him there for right now and see if he can run and do that. Because at that point, you have an idea of what you already have at that position if Thuney isn't going to be able to play.
I think that's the biggest battle because if I know Andy Reid and Andy Heck, they probably want to go with the veteran in Caliano just because he's a veteran and not put another rookie out there, right? I hope that that's not the case. That's going to be the secondary battle that we haven't discussed here specifically today because we're talking about Kingsley in the left tackle spot, but that's going to be a battle as well. Who do you think comes out on top of it? That's what we'd like to know. Leave your comments down below here on YouTube. You can put them in the Spotify reviews or the Apple reviews. And get ready because it is rookie mini camp this weekend. You're going to see that soon. We'll have reaction for you coming next week as well as a continued breakdown, looking at the other draft picks and what their roles should be to begin and where they could end up. So we're looking for your opinion as well. Chris, I hope you have a good weekend. I hope you guys do out there too. Have a good one. We appreciate you listening. Make sure you like, sub, and hit the bell. And we'll be back with you next week. Enjoy rookie minicamp.